So when you're embarking on a new series or you've got an idea for something, what do you start with? How far in advance do you plan? Do you take it for granted that Honest June will have 2 more books, or do you wait until you get confirmation and then start planning, or you just take it one book at a time? How do you get going?
Yeah, so I think start with what the big idea is going to be. What's the big concept that I'm trying to bring to life? And then I take sometimes up to a year just to work through those ideas. What is culture? What's happening in culture? Just what's happening. Is this a trend? Is it going to be over by the time we get a book out? Because how long sometimes it takes to get books out. Will this still be happening? And one of the things I love about writing for tweens, which is why I always say I don't know if I'll write for any other demo but middle grade, is that there are some common themes that I think no matter your age, if you are a middle grade reader, it's a life stage that you're going to go through, right? And so there is what happens when you get to middle school. There is what happens when you have your first crush, right? Like all of these things are typical middle grade behavior. So I know that I will build that in as building blocks. And then I think one of the things I'm known for is really trying to, speak to at-risk readers and having moments that they respond to that gets them hooked on the book, right? And so whether it's the art style or the text messages in the book, or with Zee, it's always for secret diary entries. It's like, what's the hook? And then I dive into who the cast is and what makes the cast unique. With June, it's the first time an Honest June that I've gone with an all Black cast. And that was really important to me to really dive in to this diverse story. And I really believe that all readers benefit from diverse stories. And I think that June has, to hear that June is like Ella Enchanted meets Dork Diaries. I was so grateful. And so, I couldn't believe that comparison, but it really brings home the idea that this is a book that's really for all young readers who enjoy those type of books. And so, that's why it takes me about a year to really bring this all together. And then I go into Pinterest boards. I go into planning every detail of what each of the characters look like, how they approach things, what they would do in certain situations. I map all of that out. I map out where they live. With June, I created this fictitious town, Featherston Creek, and what happens in there. And then I dive into, now that I have the characters and the places and the things that are happening, how many books do I think we need to make this work? And with June, Penguin was so gracious to agree to the first 3, and then we'll see what happens. With Zee, we got picked up for 4, then got an order earlier this year for 2 more. And so we know that there will be 6. And I think we go from there. And then, now I'm at the place of thinking, and I have a new series coming next year called The Stitch Click. And the idea is I came up with this idea years ago about 5 girls who are really different from very different backgrounds who meet in a fashion class. And it's about this budding friendship from really 5 very, very different girls. And that took a lot of setup, and so my process is long. There's some, Honest June was a concept I first wrote around the time I worked on Zee back in 2007, and so sometimes it takes a long time, but then when I get into it, it's probably about a year, and then working through, the first book.
So when you're in, we got so many questions on the back of that, but I'll contain myself. If you have an idea, 5 years ago for the Stitch Club, and you're outlining, you're trying to figure out what's gonna where the market's gonna go. How are you certain that that's still going to be relevant when it finally does come out? I assume at first you're starting with just what is the story that I want to tell? How do I express myself as an artist? What kind of specific things do you do without giving away too many of your trade secrets? What kind of specific things do you go to? Yes, not only will I love telling this story, but it will be relevant. I can confirm beyond just my own thoughts on what I think will happen, and know that yes, with some degree of certainty, as certain as you can be, that this will be a thing.
Yeah, I think that really, I think you point to me leaning into my background of 20 plus years in marketing, right? And I think I was so used to the sell through of ideas that weren't my own, right? So whether I'm selling you a laptop or the new TV show, It was always, what's the message that's going to make sense for the times that we're in? And that's just probably the secret sauce of a lot of what I do, is that I'm always thinking about that. I don't approach the process like I'm the best writer ever and I have the best idea ever. It's all just, I'm doing a read of what's going to work. And even with material or ideas, like the big idea that was maybe 10 plus years old, it's like when you start to bring it to fruition, you then start to say, well, what's going to make this really resonate in the times we're living in? And so I do believe there are universal themes, like I said earlier, that tweens that go with the life stage of what tween really means. And I was studying tween, from day one. I had a massive CPG or consumer packaged good client that wanted me to start to explain the tween consumer. And so that was really my area of expertise, understanding millennials and then understanding Gen Z. And so this is the world I live in. I'm constantly doing that. But I still believe that there are themes that, whether I was a tween, I was a tween 30 years ago. I can't even believe I can say that now, but I was a tween 30 years ago. There are things I went through when I read Ramona, and thank goodness for, those girls who got me through my tween and teen years. And I think that those themes still resonate to girls today. I'm watching my niece go through this life stage and I'm like, wow, some things never change. It's just how we deliver them and what we talk about. That's what's changing.
I love my questions. Can you take 20 years of incredible experience and just distill that down to this one secret and give it to me? So, and then, well, let's go back just a little bit. So you're already tremendously successful. You've got your company going. You could go on and do marketing forever. What was it that pivoted you and said, hey, you know what? I think I want to start writing for tweens. And eventually, it sounds like you've come back around to fashion as well. But what was that impetus?
I loved middle grade. I loved when I did Mackenzie Blue. It was really when my agency was really taking off, and I had to be so focused on that work. And when I sold the audio rights a couple of years ago to Audible, I felt like I was given a second chance to get into that. And I think as a marketer, content started to become more and more important to the work I was doing, right? So it went to branded content, and entertainment was something I was doing, and I was quite successful at it. I worked with Oprah Winfrey Network on the Super Soul 100. We created these massive social moments, and I realized I liked doing that thing more than some of the marketing, because I felt like I was on the activation side, right? It wasn't just the insight side, and I love the insights portion, but then I want to take all of that data and all of that information I have and do something with it. And so that's really what inspired me to create Relevant Media. Was I want to make stuff with the information I have. And we talk about the lack of diversity in middle grade. Why not be part of a solution, right? There are going to be many, many writers who come into this space who become part of that solution, but why not, throw my hat in the ring too and say, I want to be part of that solution. But content's just a really interesting space. And I think it's only getting better. And I think when someone tells you that something is dead or dying, what's been so fascinating to watch is how it just gets better, right? So, do you remember years ago when everybody thought TV was dead? And now you've got, I don't know if you saw, we won't say when we're recording, right? But the tribute to Norman Lear, and it just makes you see all of these Hollywood stars who are doing TV, right? TV's never been better. I can't think of another time when I've enjoyed TV more. Books, podcasts, there's so many pieces of, areas and content that are really exciting, what we're doing with audio content. And so just felt for me personally, like content was a space that was really exciting, and I could bring a unique perspective having had a career in marketing into, working in content.